Hey folks, so let me just lay down a marker at this hour on August 6th of 2024. Approaching midnight, today Kamala Harris announced her pick for vice president. And I want to send a sincere, heartfelt thanks to Kamala Cackles Harris for doing us all a favor. She selected arguably the worst ever, or at least in a century, worst pick for vice president. Why is that? Well, stay tuned. And I'll share with you why Tim Waltz is arguably the worst possible selection. Thanks, Kamala.
Welcome back once again. This is Chris Report, and he assured me that since I'm in town in Boulders, folks, this is Chris Wyatt reporting from South Africa.
All right, so let's get to it. First off, this clown signed legislation into law to allow late-term abortions up until birth. In other words, the murder of an American citizen in the womb. Why? Well, I guess it's a woman's right to murder an American citizen. He also signed legislation and cheered along with a bunch of his sycophants about how they're giving licenses to criminal alien invaders who have violated our sovereignty and invaded our nation. He also lied about his cowardice in quitting the Minnesota National Guard to run for Congress. He didn't have to leave the Guard. He was just too chicken to deploy with his unit and left them high and dry when their senior-most NCO quit with a fraudulent, lying assertion that he had to do so to run for Congress. That's simply not factually true. Active duty soldiers cannot run for political office. Reservists and guardsmen can run for and hold office. You don't have to resign. That's a lie. Just another lie from another leftist. Oh, and here's the really exciting one from 1995. He was driving under the influence. He's a drunk, going 96 miles per hour in a 55 zone. Yep. He failed both the field sobriety and breath test administered by a state trooper, according to a September 25, 1995 police report. There was a strong odor of alcoholic beverage that was detected emitting from Mr. Waltz's breath in person. This from the Nebraska State Trooper's report. Now, according to a court transcript, he had a blood alcohol concentration of 0.128. Woo-hoo! He was pickled. Now, his office insisted that he incurred hearing issues from his time in the National Guard that caused a miscommunication, and that the deafness caused balance issues that could be why he failed the sobriety test. He couldn't understand what the officer was saying to him, Waltz's campaign manager claimed falsely in 2006. But back in 1995, he was serving in the Minnesota National Guard. Ladies and gentlemen, you cannot serve in the military if you're deaf or have balance issues. So this is another lie by another shameful, disgusting, vile Democratic candidate. Yeah. Now, when his drunkenness came up in the 2006 election campaign, his campaign manager, as I said, claimed he couldn't understand what the officer was saying to him because he was deaf. But if he was deaf, he wouldn't be serving in the Minnesota National Guard. And he served in the Guard for another decade after that. Now, it appears that due to the officer's failure to recognize Waltz's deafness, which was non-existent, the blood test results were suppressed during proceedings and were unable to be used as evidence against him if the case had gone to trial. He took a plea bargain. So what is this? A case of white liberal privilege? White privilege? Yeah, I suppose it was. Ladies and gentlemen, Waltz is possibly the worst vice presidential pick in a century. You can try to put lipstick on a pig, but you'll need a ton of Maybelline to cover up this hideous loser. And his running mates' guffaws, cackles, failures, and betrayal of America, our ideals, and our citizens. They can dress Kamala Harris up any way they want, but this is a woman who is the border czar, despite their lies. That's Joe Biden's claim. That's Kamala's claim, who made one trip to the border and allowed 20 million, 10 million, 13 million, nobody really knows the true number, of criminal alien invaders to violate our sovereignty and in our midst everywhere, causing all kinds of chaos in our communities, drawing on resources meant for Americans and legitimate green card holders here, and undermining legitimacy of our immigration system, which millions of people take advantage of following the rules to become residents and then legal residents and then become citizens down the road. She's responsible for that. Destroyed this country, along with her idiot boss, Joe Biden, the demented lunatic. Tim Waltz is a perfect fit for Kamala Harris. They're both leftist sock puppets. Although one can't help but wonder if the reason the $300 million has flowed into the campaign after the palace coup in which they committed a coup d'etat against the sitting president by forcing Joe Biden out the window and not in the campaign. After the palace coup, the Wall Street powers that be, the Democratic donors, the Democratic elites, who provided the $300 million, which you and I can't provide. We're limited by law to $3,300 for a candidate. Otherwise, we go to jail, like Dinesh D'Souza did. Yeah, but apparently as Democrats, you can give dark money and get away with that. But $300 million was sitting there waiting till they got rid of Joe. Then they poured it in for Kamala. Yeah. Did those same donors tell sock puppet Kamala that she'd get to be president, the first Blasian president, if she picked Tim Waltz? And why did they pick Tim Waltz? Because Kamala, if she winds up as president, will be no different than Joe Biden. She won't be calling the shots. She won't be making decisions. It's just window dressing. It is literally lipstick on a pig. Tim Waltz, the dyed-in-the-wool, violent, perfect Democrat, a drunk, a loser, a cheater, a liar, a betrayer of American ideals, and someone who steals honor, stolen valor. Typical Democrat. Yeah, today's Democrat, not your traditional Democrat, but the leftists that run around today. Perfect candidate for her. What has she ever accomplished? And his accomplishments all come into question when we see more and more about him. If you're trying to find out who Tim Waltz is today, the same day, or minutes before that day ends, that he was announced as vice presidential candidate, spend a little time on Twitter. Do a little research on the internet. Use DuckDuckGo. DuckDuckGo doesn't scrub results. Google does scrub results, and they're already hiding his DUI. Google's hiding it. You can't find it, or it's difficult to find. But go to DuckDuckGo or another search engine, and you'll find it readily. And you'll see what kind of a nasty person Tim Waltz is. This is the same man that George Floyd, the nonsense in Minneapolis, the incarceration of police officers for obeying the law and following the law and doing their job, and allowing this false narrative about systemic racism to run around this country. He's responsible for it in no small measure. Tim Waltz gives driver's license to criminal alien invaders and is proud about it. Allows women to murder children in the 9th month of pregnancy. Drives 96 miles an hour in a 55-mile-an-hour zone. And we're supposed to ignore that because it was 30 years ago. Nope. A man with poor judgment who has gotten by on his privilege. White, liberal, democratic privilege. No consequences for your behavior. Well, guess what? Thank you, Kamala Harris. This was a gift. We'll enjoy exposing your running mate and you for the next 3 months. Cheers, everybody.